Kia ora and welcome to Wahine, a podcast celebrating wahine in business who are carving their own path with intention, courage and vision. This is a space for honest kōrero about building a business that reflects your identity, your values and the legacy you're creating. I'm your host, Sandra Julian, business coach, mentor and wahine Māori. In each episode, I sit down with wahine entrepreneurs and leaders to explore the real stories behind their success, the lived experiences, the cultural connections, and the bold leadership that shape who they are not only in business, but in life. This isn't hustle culture. This is wahine legacy leadership. Tēnā koe, Ella. Nau mai haramai ki te hōtaka wahine. Thank you so much for joining me today, especially on Matariki. Lovely to have you on the podcast and dive into your story. I'm really grateful to be able to share this space with you because the rebrand of the podcast to Wahine, it has the intention to uplift voices of wahine in business. Wahine who are not only building businesses, but reshaping the narrative of what we want business to look like for us and our whānau. So it's about reclaiming our space and leading with heart and purpose. So thank you so much for joining me today and for having this conversation. I know we've talked about it for a wee while now, so it's lovely to have you here.
Ka whai, kia ora, tēnā koe. No, it's such an honour to be featured, especially in the new rebrand of Wahine. Very excited to be here. So kia ora.
Thank you. First off, let me hand the mic over to you. I'd love for you to tell the listeners and the watchers a bit about your business, what you do, who you serve, and the impact that you're trying to make.
Ka wai, kia ora. Well, my name's Ella Sargent and I come from Ngāpuhi, which is a tribe in the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And then I also have ancestors from England and Deutschland, Germany, so sort of spread across different pockets of the world, but was born and raised in Nelson, top of the South Island. And I currently have two businesses, Manawa Māori, which is a Māori language provider, and we support individual learners, professionals and corporates. And then I also have a marketing agency called Multi Agency, and we support founders and businesses with marketing throughout Aotearoa and beyond, really. So, yeah, a couple of different, or I suppose, pockets in different areas, really, but really love having impact with people, connection and empowerment, I would say.
I am fascinated because those are two quite different, businesses doing quite different things. So let's start by telling the story of Mana Māori.
Yes. Yeah, ka pai. Yeah, so it's sort of, there's the two different industries, obviously, and areas, but obviously both cover communication. So I feel like that's sort of the key weave in, obviously, being a lover of language and communication. But yeah, Manawa Māori, the journey of that really started in 2021 when I started learning Māori through a local polytechnic. And yeah, I sort of was looking for ways to learn Māori beyond a classroom environment. And so for me, a lot of that time was either on my phone or listening to podcasts on Spotify. So there were quite a few, realms. But yeah, for me, it started as an Instagram page. So Manawa Māori definitely didn't begin as a business. And I actually had no intention of starting a business. I was in my final year of college. So it was very much just creating an Instagram page and uploading what I was learning at night class. And then, it wasn't until 2022 that we decided to launch a flashcard Māori emotion series. And we got some funding from Te Pūtahitanga or Te Waipounamu. And so that was really exciting to sort of launch as a product-based business initially. And then, began doing some tutoring alongside studying at university in my first year. And so it sort of naturally, like a lot of founders, I sort of fell into the world of business and, didn't really have any intentions of doing that. But, it worked out really nicely. And so I was just doing one-to-one tutoring and really beginner Māori initially. And then through that, last year we were officially launched as a company, really. So it's, been quite a journey with Manawa Māori, but really exciting.
So, and what does Manawa Māori do now? I've had a quick look at the website, but what would you say are the core services that you offer under the umbrella of Manawa Māori?
Yeah, kapai. So under Manawa Māori, we have a couple of different offerings, and throughout the years, we've definitely streamlined our offerings to meet the needs of modern learners. And I think that particularly through the movement of revitalisation too, those needs have changed quite a lot from even when I started learning a few years ago and what is out there. And there's quite a few more providers than when I started initially too. So under Manawa Māori, we offer language courses. So we offer for individuals and then also teams as well, which has been really exciting to see so many organisations jumping on board that journey as well. And then we also have a community membership, which is a really accessible way for individual learners essentially to pay either a monthly or annual subscription and be able to access resources at the tap of their phone or via computer. And then we obviously offer verified translation services too, which is really helpful for businesses and organisations that need that support really. So yeah, there's quite a few different offerings, but all under Māori language, related obviously.
Yeah, that's fabulous. You know, you've created a client base with what you were learning, you know, so you've attracted people to you as a result of you making the decision to learn Māori language.
Yeah. And I think it's been quite a natural, probably not so much these days. Like I don't always do, I suppose, founder-facing things on our Instagram anymore compared to when I began. But I think a big reason that Manawa Māori connects with a wide range of people is because it's very much like I'm learning too, or like we're all learning as well and we're on that journey together. And I think that's, a key reason why it does land for people who maybe have never grown up with exposure and then people that have been immersed but are reconnecting. So, I would say that's sort of how we can tap into those different realms really. Yeah.
And the client base that comes to you, and the reason why I asked this question is because, you know, through Wānanga Māori, whether it's Raukawa, Aotearoa, whatever the wānanga, they're offering free Māori language programs to enroll in, learn language, you know, and offering it for free. So your offering is a paid offering. How do you differentiate yourself from, you know, what's available for free and getting people along to pay for the resource and the service to help them learn, Jill?
Yes, Kawhai, really good question because we do get this quite often. And I just saw a comment on our Facebook ads about like, you know, why do we have to pay for this and those sort of questions. And I think particularly in the Māori realm, a lot of the time people are asked that question about like, why do you charge so much for this or why should we pay this when you can have a free offering? And I think one of the key things that I discovered as a learner, particularly having to attend night class and learning, you know, like if you have got a full-time job or if you have got a family, I think the key thing I love about Manawa Māori is that you're sort of investing in the accessibility, the flexibility and the freedom to have autonomy over your own language journey. And I think that was one of the key things, like with anything really, like as we were just talking about, like StreamYard as a platform, or if you're paying for project management software or whatever it might be, those are just business related platforms, but you know, whatever it might be is to make your life easier. And I think that's one of the key things that I identified as a learner, which was a barrier for lots of people, was, you know, having to go out of your way to learn Māori. And so I think that you are making an investment in making your journey really easy and being able to learn from anywhere in the world at any time that suits you. That's sort of the key reason really why that investment is there. And that's what sort of makes it into, free offerings.
Yeah, so really differentiating that investment in yourself where you can be anywhere in the world and still be able to access resources and learning. Love that. From a, Manawa Māori business model, are you attracting a lot of Māori into here, or is there a lot of non-Māori coming towards you in terms of how you're serving individuals and how you're serving businesses? Because I heard you say, businesses are coming on board.
Yeah, no, it's a really beautiful, exciting space because we do have quite a nice blend of people of Māori descent and then also a lot of non-Māori, and really actually inspiring throughout our journey with Foundations for Teams, which was a team for corporates really. We've actually identified lots of pockets from around the world, whether it was from India or Scotland or the Netherlands, like wherever it might be in the world, we're finding that there are a lot of learners in Aotearoa, New Zealand, being multicultural, obviously, having quite a connection with lots of different places. So not even just European and Māori, but beyond that too. So yeah, we definitely do get both. And yeah, I'd say particularly if it's through teams as well, you have quite a nice mix of lots of different cultures. So yeah, it's a very exciting space to be in. Yeah.
Do you find that there is more desire to learn Te Reo Māori, today, given where we are at in our journey, despite the current political environment? Te Reo Māori is seen more on television, it's heard on the radio, it is on the streets. You can go into some cafes and order your coffee in Te Reo Māori. Do you think there is more of an acceptance and more non-Māori are wanting to learn because of where we're at today compared to, 20 years ago?
Yeah. Even, me and my papa, my dad, we talk about this quite often, that even when we started in 2021, like the change that we're noticing within our own communities and wider society and Aotearoa too, it definitely is transforming. And I think that there's a wider acceptance. And I know that there's a lot of, no matter what political climate we're in, or no matter what community or city you live in, there's obviously going to be people that don't necessarily celebrate it as much as say we do. But I think that I've tried to make a really intentional decision about not being oblivious to it and not ignoring that those things are there, but really trying to focus on the people that are wanting to join this space and celebrate the Māori language. So yeah, I think there's a really exciting, not only acceptance, but I think confidence that a lot more people are having, and through generations too, but the confidence that it's something really special that everyone can celebrate. Doesn't matter if you are Māori or if you're not Māori. So yeah, I think there's a really exciting transformation happening within lots of pockets around Aotearoa. Yeah,
I would agree. Like the landscape is changing so much. It feels like we've come so far and yet we've still got so far to go.
Yes, but I also think though, because I know that we do hear that really often, but I also think that, like, I know that it's a little bit hard because there are some other Indigenous language movements happening worldwide, but I think it's so important to just like embrace where we're at and not always be feeling like, oh, but it could be so much better, or it could be like that, because, like we are where we are. And I think it's a really exciting space, and it's not to be sort of always like pushed away, if that makes sense, because there's lots of exciting things happening.
Yeah. So talk to me about the team inside of Manawa Māori. You're teaching the classes, or you're not teaching classes anymore? What does that look like?
Yeah, so our team's offering at the moment, we have Foundations for Teams, which is a beginner introduction level, really. It's an 8-week course for teams, which has been such a cool offering, and being able to sort of step inside the world of professional work environments, really, and seeing what teams need. So with that offering, it's all delivered online. So that's the really cool thing about it, is that you can learn from anywhere. So if you've got remote workers or people in Auckland and then a Wellington office, it makes it really easy for us to all still be learning together, really. Yeah, so with that offering, I do teach online, obviously. I think it's nice for teams to have a person sort of guiding them on that journey. We have obviously got self-paced course offerings for individuals, but I feel like when it comes to team learning, it is really great to have a person to be able to like ask questions to, and especially pronunciation wise, and have someone guide you through that journey. So yeah, it's been a really exciting sort of new pathway that we've been refining over the last year, really, because we launched it last March. So we've sort of had a year really of refining each intake, and we've had, just in the past year, we've had just over 175 professionals come through the course. So it's been a really exciting journey, really, that we're on.
That's exciting. And what about the translation services? I'm just going to say it, with ChatGPT and other AI tools available, being able to put some English in there and say, hey, translate this to Te Reo Māori.
Yeah.
What does the landscape of that translation service look like, and how's that offering within your business?
Yeah, so at the moment, we have obviously a team of verified translators, and usually the process works where people will send in on a project basis, and then obviously we've got ongoing retainer offerings as well. And usually our team will work to sort of bridge, like our job essentially is to bridge the gap between a Māori lens culturally and then also language-wise, and then sort of wrap that into English as well. But yeah, I think on your question around AI, I think it's exciting. I know there's a lot of mixed opinions around artificial intelligence and how we use those tools safely. But I think that, yeah, like ChatGPT, just through my own experience with testing it out and asking for feedback, I think it's, very incredible. And I do think that the future will be, I mean, obviously we don't know, but I do think just like with a lot of language translating platforms, whether it's DeepL or Google Translate, whether it's German or any other language, Chinese and whatnot, you can just put in and get a lot of quite good cultural contextual feedback as well. So I do think that will happen with the Māori language, and it's already giving us quite, insightful feedback and translations too. So that's something that, as a business, I want us to always be kind of on the, looking at the future of that and how we can integrate AI safely into the business with that. At the moment, we haven't used it too much, but I think it would be silly, like we'd be left behind, with the future of that if we didn't implement that in the future. But yeah, it's just finding safe ways to do that. Yeah.
I was in a room with other business people and it was focused on AI. The delivery of the conversation was about AI. And then use of AI for translation came up.
Yes.
And I could feel my insides just lighting up on fire in terms of like irritation at the conversation because they were like, yeah, we could just use this to make sure that we've got, a Māori introduction in our, whatever homepage of our website, letter to speakers. And I'm like, but on the flip side of that, you can, but should you? Because if you can't speak real Māori and you don't really know whether that translation is right or wrong, like, should you?
Yeah.
And they all just looked at me really strangely. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. If you don't know that it is right or wrong, or you're not prepared to turn up and speak those words from your mouth, then appropriateness to put it in a written format somewhere is wrong on every level, And I just got sideways looked at.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, and I've really found this particularly since just even traveling overseas and because I'm also on the journey of learning German too. So I think, when you learn other languages, you come to understand that journey of language learning a lot differently than if you're just learning, one, being bilingual. So I think that, there are a lot of people that potentially view it in that way of just like, we can just translate, like, say for German, like you can just look it up and you can just get, sort of feedback the sentence that you want to say. And I think that maybe not at this stage, maybe, ChatGPT, for example, or AI tools potentially don't have all the resources to give you like a really authentic, accurate introduction in Māori, whatever it might be yet. But I think there is the future where I think that is, possible just with the way that technology is advancing so fast. But I think one of the key things that we hear from clients and learners too is they really enjoy hearing the cultural lens, which, as I say, it's not to say that AI won't be able to give you this in the future, but the cultural lens of like it's human. And I think that's the key thing is that people love. It's just like, for example, you could just use Google Translate to like speak, write an email in whatever language. But a lot of the time people want a human in front of them teaching them the context of how to say that or with pronunciation and whatnot. Obviously not everyone, but I'd say a lot of the general population do prefer that learning style. So I think it's an individual case by case, I would say, like in terms of AI use. But I don't think we should write it off. And I think this is a key thing too for even looking at like transliterations. And I know a lot of people have mixed, and we often get asked about, is it appropriate to use the transliteration for this English word and things like that. And I think, well, it's like we're in the modern world now. And I think that the more that we sort of add up these barriers of like, oh no, you can't use that word, or, you can't use this, then the further behind our language gets in some ways too, obviously done in the right way. But I do think we have to be careful not to add too many obstacles to language advancement or human, connection as well. So yeah, it's a whole topic itself, really. Yeah.
It's a whole topic. Yeah. And I suppose I come across that at the moment. Like all of my initial real learning was here in Taranaki with Taranaki speakers, Taranaki dialect. And so, when I go out and maybe go to other wānanga that don't necessarily have specific dialect that they're teaching in, there'll be a sentence structure. I'm like, yeah, but rather than that structure, what about this word? And they're like, well, suppose you could use that. But, because the teacher, that's in front of me at the moment isn't across all the dialects and all the different, nuances of the language of each area across the country. So, so it's an interesting conversation, when you start finding yourself in a classroom where there is that common, what I call tautawhiti language, which is a general language being taught.
Yes.
And then overlaying the nuances of dialectual kupu, not just pronunciation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well that because there is no real roadmap, I mean, there is definitely, like with Wales, like that's been really exciting to see that revitalisation movement happening as well. And I think we can definitely draw from those like Indigenous language movements. But I think as well that also even looking to like, say, my native language, English, is thinking about like how different, our ancestors from hundreds of years ago would think about how we speak now. So I think that there's that acceptance that we have to have somewhere along that journey of like language will look different and it actually should look different because the way we communicate now is so different to how our ancestors 100 years ago communicated. And that's why I think on a small scale, like the introduction and implementation of transliterations, some of that conversation can translate to AI or like those kind of things still done authentically and safely. But I think we shouldn't, close off those opportunities to advance our language on a global scale too. Yeah.
That's a good point. Very good point. Amazing. All right. I would love to switch gears just a little bit and let's talk about multi-agency. Tell me about that business, what it does, who it serves, what's the client base, what's the key service offering?
Yes. Yeah, so multi-agency was sort of a business, again, that I fell into to sort of solve my own problem, which was as a business owner and when you're a startup or you're bootstrapping your own business, you don't always have the capital and resources really to invest in, the marketing that your competitors might have. For me, multi-agency was a business solution to that really for other founders and business owners like me who needed modern marketing support really. So at the moment, we serve businesses in Aotearoa and founders and specialise in social media management. That's sort of our sweet spot of what we love. So that can involve content strategy, brand development, obviously online, posting, scheduling, all of that stuff really is entailed. So slightly different to obviously the niche market of Manawa Māori, but as I said, there's that map of communication which I really enjoy, and I think as well across both businesses it is about building confidence really, whether that's in like Māori language speaking and delivery or whether that's in feeling really proud and confident of the business that people are building really.
Māori language or online language, because that's what social media is. It's a whole new online language that we're all coming to grips with, I suppose.
Yes, no, definitely.
So social media management. And are you mainly dealing with like e-commerce businesses or retail? Is there a certain type of business that you're serving in that agency?
Yeah, so at the moment, it's actually service-based at the moment in terms of clientele. Some in the tech industry, education, but we really love e-commerce and especially fashion, wellness as well. So a lot of that I think as well with Manawa Māori, because we're a service-based business, like we've sort of had a bit more experience in that sort of service-based offering realm of marketing. But I really love product-based. I think it's very fun because you've got things that you can weave into content and things as opposed to service. It's very much like brand shoots and then educational posts and things like that too. So slightly different, but across lots of industries really.
And businesses just here in Aotearoa, haven't branched out globally?
So businesses in Aotearoa at this stage, but obviously we're really open to expanding and we only really got off the ground last year with Multi as well, with it being founded last year. So that's in the pipeline of things that we'd like to do is especially Australia and things like that too.
What does the team inside of multi-agency look like at the moment, given that you just launched last year?
Yeah. So at the moment, it's myself obviously doing the marketing, and then we've also got a graphic designer, which is exciting. And at the moment, we're sort of planning to expand with in-house photography and strategy as well. So yeah, we've sort of got a little network, being able to support clients. Yeah.
Fab. Then my biggest question is, how do you manage your time? Like across both businesses when you are doing a lot of the work in both of them, front-facing Manawa Māori and, doing the majority of the work inside of multi-agency. How are you managing your time?
Yeah, really good question. Probably the biggest game changer that I've done this year, which has really helped, is not only time blocking, but actually theme blocking my days. That's something that I'm really passionate about. If you are managing, like whether it's multiple businesses or multiple client projects, I think that's one of the easiest ways to be able to get work done productively. So usually I have from like Monday to Friday really blocked days, whether it's like business development and admin, or maybe it's like membership, content creation day. But yeah, that's sort of the key way that I split my time. I did initially try to do like, one day for Manawa Māori, one day for multi-agency, but I feel like that's just, there's not enough days in the week to be doing that. So it definitely just depends on, what's lined up for that week or that month that has to be done as well, and deadlines. Yeah. But mostly theme blocking, would be my...
Yeah, I love that. I love theme blocking. It helps stay focused and it stops that context switching continuously during the day, because when you context switch, you lose so much time because your brain has to go, hold up, we're not doing that anymore. Okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah, switch around. Yeah, no, definitely. It's been... Well, I've tried lots of different methods, but I feel like that's been the most productive outcomes, is when I know that I'm, waking up and it's Thursday and we're doing this. Yeah, as opposed to having a list of lots of to-do things. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. You're on the right track for sure. So I'm interested to know, you've had Manawa Māori off the ground, and then last year you decide to launch multi-agency. Like, what inspired you, or what was that moment that you thought, I don't have enough to do with this business, let me start a new one?
Yeah. No,
what was going on, for you to think that I can do this?
Yeah, I think that with business, and I think a lot of founders can probably relate, like when you have a lot of ideas, you have to test a lot, you fail a lot, you learn a lot. But I think when it came to multi-agency, like in the background of building Manawa Māori, I had already been doing a lot of, contract social media work and communications sort of things throughout that initial year, really, because it was all quite a short timeline of from when I actually launched Manawa Māori to sort of that. But yeah, and then I sort of just thought, actually, like, I love this as much as I love, our language, and it's something I'd love to be able to sort of expand into and work with other businesses in the marketing space. And so I think, like, for me, I think it's because I'm young, maybe, that I have this sort of, I don't know if it's like just being a little bit naive to the world, but also I haven't got a lot of responsibilities. I can sort of take the risks of being like, actually, I'm going to start this. If it fails, whatever, like I don't have probably a lot of responsibilities that other people might have, like older than me, to stop them from just starting. And if you fail, then you fail, but you tried it at least. Yeah. So I think that was sort of me, knowing that if I love it and I'm passionate about it, then I could make it work. Yeah.
Nice. Lots of experimenting and seeing where it might take you.
Yes, no, definitely.
What's the big picture for multi-agency? Starting it because you've worked out you've loved it, and you've attracted a client base who are prepared to pay for you to do something that you love. What's the bigger picture beyond this initial phase of trial and error, I suppose?
Yeah, I would say, my big vision for multi-agency is obviously I would love for us to be able to support, the best iconic brands, really, whether it's in Aotearoa or obviously internationally, and have a global presence too. But I think, for me, it's about experimenting. There's lots of different visions that I obviously have, but I think testing out, like, I feel like because we're in such early stages too, it's important just to like do the mahi and do the work as well, and not just have lots of dreams. Like, I need to actually do the work too. So but obviously big sort of goal is for us to have a global presence and be doing marketing for, like, the iconic brands that we know and love, really. But that's sort of where I would say at this stage.
Nice. And how is your identity, like your culture, because we know that that's why you started Manawa Māori, but how is your identity in cultural, personal, lived experiences showing up in the multi-agency business?
Yeah. Well, I think another really good question. I think that a lot of it is actually about like people connecting and communication. And I think that even thinking back to when I was really young, I always like wanted to be a primary teacher, and I always loved learning and that reciprocal relationship from teaching and learning too. I think that's always been really interesting to me. So I feel like in lots of ways that part of my identity shows up or gets to show up in being able to focus on communication and things too. So yeah, I would say whilst they are different companies, it still allows me to emphasize communication and language and connection, really, which is what whether that's online or whether that's in person, building communities. Yeah, that's something I'm really passionate about as people, really. Yeah.
And that's probably my observation is why you've kind of got more of a service-based business client. With both of them is that relational piece.
Yes.
And I think people who start service-based businesses have that relationship as a core value and a core identity of who they are and holding really great relationships. So
yeah, no, it's a very exciting space. And I think as well that, and sort of mixed back to AI, what we were talking about before, but listening to a podcast on how, like, obviously with the advancement of technology, that human connection will become, the real currency and value of like how can you connect with people, because we'll all be so good at technology. So I think that, particularly, even when you think of like COVID and lots of these huge events, like it actually does come back to like, well, how well can you connect with your community, or how well can you connect with your friends, your partner, or your, children, or whatever it might be, I think, or your clients. It does come back to people, really. And I think that's the most important thing we take with us really in life is the people around us. So yeah, very important skill to have, really.
Have you seen any common challenges about, from both of your businesses, that there's some commonality in the challenges as you're building these businesses?
Yeah, I would say that, and again, I think like the best businesses are always when like you're a customer or you know the pain points because you're the customer. And I think probably with both, and something that I'm just like really have been trying to hone in both businesses, is not only like a modern outlook, but particularly with Manawa Māori, and this is something that I've come across quite a lot, is that you can't mix in a way that sounds, think of how I'm wording this, but quite often it's that like people want premium and beautiful and modern just as much as they sort of want authenticity and culture, just in the Manawa Māori context. And I think we often feel like you can't have both, but they don't actually compete. They can work and elevate each other together. So I feel like that has been one of the things, and maybe that's just like me, but I do feel like there's a lot of people that they want to be able to have more, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying about, what's the difference between free offerings versus, if you're investing in a course. And I think it's the same thing as like they want to have that option, that if they want to invest in a really elevated experience, whether it's learning or whether it's through marketing, like they want that option. Yeah. So I feel like potentially that, if that kind of answers your question, is probably having modern solutions for the modern market. And then, and I'd say like having options really in that space. Yeah.
Because both of the businesses that you have, there is a lot of competition out there, if you view it that way, in terms of people have got a lot of choice when it comes to how they learn Te Reo Māori, or the marketing agency or social media agency that they choose and want to work with. So, the two businesses that you've chosen to move into have an established market and lots of competitors. So I was interested in that, what are the biggest challenges that you're coming across, and what's the commonality between these two businesses, if any? So it's a really good insight that people are looking for modern solutions in a way that fits with how they want to do both of these things.
Yeah. And I think too, on that note about coming into like a more saturated market, if you will, particularly with multi-agency, like we are stepping into a market that there are a lot of like digital marketing agencies or design agencies, creative agencies. But with Manawa Māori, I feel like we sort of stepped in at just the right time. Like this was sort of the post-COVID world, and this was like 2021, we started building the brand. And so at that stage, there were like a few individual providers, but I feel like we've definitely now, as I mentioned, like not only as a society are we becoming more accepting, but there is a lot more companies and providers really of Māori language. So I feel like for us, it's more like, well, how do we keep pivoting to make sure that we are, I suppose, being the best offering for people or giving people the best choice, or whether it's being out in our community and listening to needs more. But yeah, I think it's more so been the past year that I've realised like, oh, there's a lot more in the Māori language market now. How can we keep pivoting to stay on top really, or to be better for learners in Aotearoa? Yeah.
I mean, something that comes up really often, because humans are judgy. It's just kind of part of the human nature, right? We're all judgy. So how are you managing the pushback that you might get from sectors of the community? And this is not everyone, and I'm not saying proficient real Māori speakers have this judgment at all, but I've heard it, which is why I'm going to ask you the question, is, when someone says to you, what gives you the right to, be teaching others when you yourself are not proficient? So I hear it lots, and sometimes it's not outwardly public. It's just those little murmuring, judgy comments by humans. So how are you, I'm sure you've heard it, so how are you navigating that challenge?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question and conversation to dive into. I feel like it's something I really experienced in the beginning of my journey, like the first few years, particularly because I was literally just beginning and sort of relaying or sharing what I knew. So it was very much like I didn't actually, have all the answers or be able to do that. I think there's a couple of things like to touch on really with that. I think the first thing is, and my dad actually shared this with me, when at the beginning of my journey, when I had a lot of imposter syndrome around like, am I actually able to teach that, or can I teach that? And he sort of put it to me like, well, if you think of like sport coaches, like they can coach, but they're not the athlete type thing. And I think it's similar with learning language. Like you can facilitate the learning and you can guide the learning and not have to have all the answers and be open about that. But whether it's facilitating like our verified translators to share their input, or whether it's facilitating a really nice learning experience, that's sort of what I feel responsible for. And I think because I am so like open about the level that I'm at and that I'm on that journey too, I feel like people actually feel potentially more empowered that you can sort of be on that journey, and there is no like, you're not less than if you're not fluent or you don't have proficiency. And I think as well, the second piece on that is around judgment, and whether it's on like a political scale or whether it's in a community, or maybe you're on a marae or in a community and you hear those comments. I think I used to feel really impacted by those, but now I just like, I don't really care, which sounds sort of weird because I spent a lot of years caring, but now I don't really care because I feel like everyone has their own journey that they're on. And I feel like if you yourself are empowered and you feel happy with your journey, you probably don't go out of your way to make those kind of comments. So I feel like it's very much just blocking that sort of noise out and knowing that the work that you're doing is valuable to other people, maybe not that audience, but you're on the right path. Yeah, just because you don't have to sort of listen to that negative stuff. Yeah.
That's a beautiful response, Ella. I love that it's like, as long as you're making an impact on the people that you are serving, you are on the right track.
Yeah.
I think we can all take that, run with that, and know that whatever the impact is that we're making on the people we serve, we're on the right track.
Yes, exactly. And I think too, like, even thinking about social media and the way, and again, I was having conversations about this of like on Facebook and all the comments that people make. And actually it wasn't until we like ran paid ads on our Facebook that I noticed like how many people spend their time either writing comments, whether it's about racism or whatever it might be. And I just think this is for anyone that's like a founder or anyone that's doing something maybe different or learning as they go. I think anyone that's like hating or anyone that goes out of their way to comment something negative, I just think you can just feel grateful that you're not spending your time doing that, because I just feel like it's not reflective of you as a person. It's more so that's how they spend their time, which I feel like isn't positive. Yeah. So yeah, I would say just go with what you feels good and ignore those people that have lots of time to comment hate or to message you, those comments and things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. On that vein, how has your understanding of leadership evolved as you have been building these businesses? Because I imagine it may have looked very different back in 2021 when you were starting Manawa Māori. So, yeah, how's your understanding of leadership evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, no, I think it's changed so much, and I have been thinking lots about this, considering like where we started to sort of the journey that we're on as a company now. I think when I started my journey, I feel like my style was quite even aggressive in some ways. Like it was very defensive and telling people what they should be doing, what they should be thinking when I started Manawa Māori, and, telling them they should care about this and they should want to learn too. Whereas now I feel like my approach to people in general and like these sort of issues that can sometimes be like a bit polarizing for some people or depends what you're talking about and how you approach it. But I think actually leading with a people first approach really helps. And I know that we hear that a lot, but I do feel like going into conversations, going into discussions, or whether it's a meeting or whether it's even with your neighbor or, non-business related at all, I think that going in with the intention to connect is where you get the best out of it, really. Like if you go in trying to find things that you've got in common or things that that person cares about, and I think I've had to do that a little bit with organizations too, is like find people's whys or find their connecting points. You get a lot more out of it than just like trying to talk at people about what's important to you or why they should care. I think it's really nice to have a mutually reciprocal and connected relationship with leadership.
Great. What does the involvement of your leadership look like as you are growing these businesses? Is that something you've given some thought to? As how are you evolving yourself, not just the business?
Yes. Yeah, I've probably not thought about it as much in the past year, just because I feel like we've been doing, and I think like when I was thinking about imposter syndrome and things like that too, I just feel like doing is one of the best ways to sort of get better across the board, like whether it's growing your communication skills with whether it's contractors, employees or clients, or getting better at delivering the work that you're doing or the services. I feel like it's been just like a journey the past year, especially of just doing the work to sort of feel, then you get to the end of the year, you're like, oh, I have evolved, and your style of the way that you lead with clients or people that you work with and collaborators changes too. But I do feel like I've probably just been doing more than like just in the past year than probably thinking as much about leadership. But it is something I feel like as the businesses grow and as our teams grow and client base grows, that I will obviously be more intentional with and like personal development and things. But I feel like there's just been lots of learnings naturally and pivots and changes just from doing.
Yeah. So what are you doing with your rituals, routines, or, daily practices to keep you grounded while you're in this phase of doing?
Yes. I think that one of the key things, which I know this, like when I was thinking about this, I thought, just sort of me saying this is what I do every day is probably quite boring for listeners. So I feel like the key advice I would give around like rituals or practices would be like to find the thing that helps you sort of get within your own mind. And so for me, that's been like going outside for a walk and getting my daily steps in. But for everyone that looks different, like for some people that might be hanging out with their family or going and grabbing a coffee by yourself or whatever it could be, or catching up with a friend. But I think finding something that's really completely separated from the business has been really helpful, like for me, and I know for so many other founders too, having whether it's a hobby or something that sort of grounds you in your day-to-day life. So for me, I really love doing exercise before I start my day because it helps me not feel stressed like the minute I wake up and, check emails or whatever it could be. So I think everyone has their own thing, but for me, that's been quite important, is like exercise and like listening to a podcast. Yeah, that would be like my key thing. I don't really like journal or do those kind of things at this stage of my journey or life, but I do love listening to podcasts and things, and grounding that way, really.
Yeah, nice. So there's always a bit of move the body, have some space before you sit down and give your attention to the business every day.
Yes, I try every day. I'll say most days at the moment, but but I think when I can, it's like if it's every day, that's great. But yeah, most days, especially I think the great thing about those like daily practices is like it's almost like the prevention, like before you get too stressed or before something hits the fan, and then you've sort of got those like little moments of intervention and that break up your day, and your ends up being a really helpful thing for stress and management of your time and things.
And what you've just shared, is so key, even at the beginning of your business, because it's so easy to just be so excited about the business that you've started, and you just want to work on it 24/7 to keep it moving. So, the fact that you're taking the time to go, all right, how do I need to just ground myself so I can do the work, build my business?
Yeah, and I think it is such a blessing to be obsessed with the work that you do, and to want to wake up every day and want to start straight away. But I think I've really noticed, particularly when there are like stressful weeks or changes or things happening, I've noticed like, oh yes, it's because I didn't walk or because I didn't do this one thing that affect your day, and does affect your alertness to things as well. And I think as well, having your own, especially in service-based business, and like for anyone listening that's in that realm as well, because you're spending a lot of your days like communicating, whether it's online or in person too, it's really nice just to have like your own time to do whatever you enjoy doing that keeps you calm and happy, really. But yeah, I think that's a really important practice for anyone to pick up early, really.
Yeah. What do you do to decompress? After you've had a big day, things have gone a little bit sideways, communications haven't gone as planned. We always have those days where it feels like a storm. What do you do to compress at the end of your day and just let go?
Yeah, I would say I'm like, I don't have a really exciting lifestyle where I'll like, always go out and things, but I'd say usually I love like a coffee run if that's like somewhere in the day, if I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, the day's not going so well, that always keeps me happy. But otherwise I'd say really boringly, probably, switching my mind off with like a really light tally show. That would be, my thing. But otherwise, I would say again, like, exercise could go at the end of the day or something like that. But a lot of the time it's either talking it out or doing something that's really not business related, which again, that's why I say the tally element. But I think anything that sort of gets your mind off the actual issue that you're facing or the business realm can be quite nice. But nothing too like out there, like still just normal kind of things that people would do. Yeah.
And what about the wins? When you have a big win in business, you've hit a milestone that you've been working towards. How do you celebrate that? How do you reward yourself?
Yeah, really good question. And I love this because I was thinking lots about, like, obviously we've just entered a new fiscal year and or financial year, and I was thinking like, there's lots of, you set your budget, or maybe it's like client retention or like units sold or whatever it could be. And I feel like there are so many exciting wins along the way that you want to celebrate and things. I always love like, if it's just during the day, then, you celebrate and you really acknowledge it. Yeah. Or celebratory dinners out or whatever it could be, or sharing that as well with community. I think that's been a key thing for us, like even with our community members, like being able to celebrate all of our wins together is a really cool piece that I like. But yeah, usually celebrating with people that are obviously close to me, or people I've achieved a project or something with, collaborators too. But yeah, it's usually, I like to celebrate with any opportunity, or really be grateful for those things as well, because it's all a blessing, really. Yeah.
And I think sometimes we can get so tied to what's next that we forget to stop and smell the roses. We forget to stop and celebrate how far we've come, and the zone, getting to that place where you thought you would take you longer, or even if it did take you longer, you still got there. So love that.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I think it's a exciting thing to, like, it's something I'm trying to lean into more often, is like just not necessarily stopping, because I know as a founder that's frustrating to always be told to like just slow down or just pause and reflect. But I think that it's so cool to just feel really grateful for like where you're at on your journey and not always like wish it away, because I do feel like it's always, on hindsight, or we look back and we're like, oh, that was really cool, we did that. But at the time, we sort of breeze over it, as you say. So I feel like it's great when you've got like people around you that you can celebrate with or that you're doing it with. You get to enjoy it a bit more. Yeah.
Nice. So as you are building your business, and it's really great to talk with someone who's at, in the beginning years of building a business and building two businesses, what does legacy mean to you?
Yeah, something that haven't really probably thought about hugely so much, because I think that it's just like the work that you do, it's up to people around you to decide like it's sort of like reputation, like how people view you, as opposed to what you hope everyone can sort of take away. But I do think the key thing across both businesses, and also just like me as a friend or as a collaborator or whatever it could be, I think that empowerment is the key thing that I would love for everybody to feel like around me, whether that is through language learning, whether it's through marketing that makes you feel so proud of the brand that you have, or whether it's like as a collaborator feeling like you can be your best version of yourself. And the reason I say that is because I feel like all the times in my life where I've felt like my best is when I feel empowered to do what to be the best that I can be as well. And I feel like I've seen that other people, when they're uplifted, they can be their best versions too. So yeah, I'd say empowerment and confidence, really.
Great legacy, because you can do that. That's not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah. And it's through all stages of like, it's a feeling through like so many different stages of life, which I think is why it's so important for every human really to be able to experience at different stages, particularly when you feel more vulnerable, like learning Māori or those things too. I think that's when empowerment is even more crucial. Yeah.
Love that so much. I'm always fascinated with how people answer that question. And I love that you just, described it's not a destination, it's the journey, and what you do every day is creating the legacy. So amazing. Ella, thank you so much for your kōrero today and being here on the podcast. Just before we wrap up, I have a question for you that was left by the previous guest that would love you to answer. And just for context for our listeners, I didn't give this question to Ella. So every time this, I hand on the question, it'll be the first time that that it's being heard. So it gives a real raw and honest response to the question, as opposed to it having been pondered on for a wee bit. So we'll see where this goes for you, Ella, but this is an interesting one. Imagine that you hadn't become a business owner. Where do you think you'd be?
I think I would be a school teacher or a primary teacher, because I've just always wanted to do that. And so I feel like I would have somehow landed in teaching. Like I just love children. So I feel like probably a primary teacher. That's only because the reason I could answer so quick is because I was always set on doing that until like the last year of college. So yeah, I feel like teaching at primary school or doing something with children, really. Yeah, teaching, education.
Wow. And to some degree, you're doing the teaching and the education within the Manawa Māori business. So
yeah, worked out or realigned from, when I was younger. But yeah, very cool question.
Beautiful. Lovely. So given that you are a social media manager in your business, where can people connect with you? What's your favourite social media platform to hang out on?
Well, my favourite is Instagram, but I'm also on LinkedIn, and obviously both businesses are on both too. But otherwise, you can just find me at Ella Sargent X on Instagram or Ella Sargent on LinkedIn, and both businesses under their names on either platform, really.
Great. So we've got accounts for both businesses and you as the person.
Yes. yeah. Ka whai. Amazing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ella. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe mō tō kōrero I tēnei rā. It has been an absolute pleasure. I've loved just following the nature of our kōrero today and really uncovering the things I didn't know about you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for anyone that's tuning in and listening. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for your awesome questions too. It was lovely to connect and kōrero.
Ngā mihi ki a koe.
Tēnā koe.
Thank you so much for listening to Wahine. If today's kōrero resonated with you, inspired you, or made you stop and think, I'd love for you to follow the show and share it with another wahine in business. You'll find all of the links and details from this episode in the show notes. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I would really love it if you could leave a quick rating or review wherever you're listening to the podcast, because that goes a long way to helping others find this podcast and the stories we're sharing in this space. So until next time, keep building your business your way, grounded in who you are and the legacy you're here to create. The podcast music is Te Kawa Orongo by Nāneko Erawata. The episode is edited by LJS Creative Services, and the show notes and blog post are written by Bellbird Writing.